So, good morning, everyone. Now I'm stressed because we have two singers in the room, so I feel I'm like I'm not in capacity to sing, but I do believe sometimes someday I will sing. Okay. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session on advancing transboundary governance at the 5th Baltic MSP Forum, Day 2. My name is Magdalena Maczak. I'm from Maritime Institute of Gdynia Maritime University. It's my great pleasure to manage your discussion today. And I'm counting on your active participation in the second part of the session. And please keep me as the moderator busy. So this session brings together perspectives. Okay, can we have the... Oh, that's me, okay. Better skip it. Okay, so this session brings together the perspectives from both the Baltic Sea and the North Sea, exploring how we can build more adaptive, coherent, and future-oriented governance systems. And we will give you insights from the ongoing NESB project, especially its governance analysis, which look how the current governance structures and practices shape maritime spatial planning in both regions. We will also introduce recent developments in the North Sea and the evolving and increasingly important role of the Greater North Sea Basin Initiative. And we will try to respond to the question, is the internationally coordinated MSP needed? So first, you will hear two introductory presentations from the author of the governance analysis. And then we will have a small talk, discussion, or fight, or whatever you want, from the two key stakeholders from GNSBI and the Helcom Vasab MSP working group in Baltic Sea Region. And together they will reflect on current governance approaches and share ideas on how to make the transboundary cooperation more effective and future-oriented. And after the presentation, the floor will be given to you for a 30-minute of interactive session for your work. So before we start, Slido. True, Jacek. But this Slido is a little bit different because we have for you a little bit provocative question. So please read really carefully the question. What would you need to do to make transboundary cooperation fail? So think differently at the beginning, okay? You have to switch your thinking now. So we are trying to grasp what we should definitely avoid when working across borders. So scan the QR code because the results will be given not now, but later after the presentations and a pitch session. So you can write now, but the results will be shown later. Do you have access to the Slido? Is it working? Yes, all of you? Scanned? Because we are a little bit late in time, so okay. So let's move now to the first presentation. Our first speaker is Christian from the University of Groningen, Faculty of Spatial Sciences. He is a professor of planning for sustainable transformation, working on energy transition, environmental planning, and maritime spatial planning. So the floor is yours. You can use this mic or in hand.
Thank you,
12 minutes.
Yes, Christian Zuidema, but I fully appreciate that pronunciation may not be that easy with all these weird Dutch names. But I do know that if you would translate it in Estonian, it would be Lonema. So that's just for those who understand Estonian, which are not a lot. Now, framing the future of the North Sea. So what I'm going to try and do today in about 12 minutes is to first take you to the North Sea, which is slightly out of context, of course, on the Baltic Forum, but I think there's, of course, a couple of very interesting things that show parallels. But at the same time, also try to explain why international cooperation is urgent. And to do that, it is kind of important to have a look at these numbers. What in the North Sea is, I think, an exceptional challenge is energy transition. And in that sense, I think there's also a difference with the Baltic Sea, where of course energy transition plays a role, but the extent to which it plays a role may be a bit different. We want to move from about 33 gigawatts of installed capacity for offshore wind to more than 300. So that's a tenfold increase towards 2050. Those are commitments that the countries have signed up for. For my own country, the Netherlands, we want to move from less than 5 gigawatts to more than 70. And what is maybe also relevant to say about these numbers, these are not just ambitions because we would like to do that, they are also probably necessary. If Latvia would have the same population density as the Netherlands, there would be 30 million people living in this country. At the moment, it's 1.8 million. And just to give an order of magnitude kind of figure here as well, is that at the moment when you would look at the amount of renewables already generated, the Netherlands currently generates about a tenfold of wind energy as compared to the 3 Baltic countries together, and also about a tenfold of solar energy as the Baltic countries together, which only adds up to about 20% of the energy mix. Without the North Sea, countries like the Netherlands, England, Belgium cannot really do an energy transition. So this pressure is immense. There's a political pressure, and there is a very simple reality that without the North Sea we may have a problem. But it means something. If you roughly assume that would take 5 megawatts per square kilometer, which is about the average of what offshore wind farms do, then the North Sea would need about 60,000 square kilometers of offshore wind farms. For the Netherlands part, and you see that little part shown there as well, it would be around 14,500 square kilometers. That is massive. But that's not all we want. We also want to have a blue economy transition. So that means that something has to be done to have a more sustainable fishery, maybe some aquaculture, so that to have a sustainable blue economy. And of course, there are pressures based upon the ecosystem. And we want to have a green transition, which also relates to international agreements about the 30% of protected areas. So that also has to be fit into place. Now, there's a couple of questions there. Do we have enough ecological space to actually do that? Do we have enough physical space to actually do that? And do we actually have the institutional capacity to do all those things? Now, when we look at ecological space, it is important to realize that it's not that evident. Of course, we're talking about taking an ecosystem-based approach, and we heard a lot about this also this morning, and I think most of us believe that that's the right thing to do. And at the same time, you also have to ask yourself the question if we fully understand what it means. Many policy documents are talking about developing within the boundaries of the ecological system. So that doesn't mean that the ecosystem is the basis for your development. It means that it is a constraint for your development. That already tells us something about how we tend to frame it. And also there's highly contested interpretations. We did some studies in the Netherlands and we found out that it really depends on who you ask, what kind of definitions and clarity you get. And there's also limited legal clarity what it exactly means. Something like a cumulative impact assessment is at this moment legally not really part of the game. We look at protected species, which are of course representations of something of the ecosystem, but will never be the same thing as the whole ecosystem. Any ecologist can tell you that. And it's also hard to operationalize in practice. That doesn't mean we're not making progress in that direction, but in fact we're kind of operating under a lot of uncertainties with regards to all those things that we do offshore, what they will mean in the long run. Then there is also really limited understanding and knowledge. There's a lot of monitoring taking place, and of course there are a lot of projects ongoing, but a lot of the data is tricky to interpret. There are even basic things like certain bird routes where we have no real clue where they are. So there's a lot of stuff that we haven't figured out yet. So yes, we are operating partly in an environment where we're blind about what is happening. There's also constraint to international data sharing. We heard a little bit about that this morning, where it has to do something with trust, but also has something to do with protecting national interests. So being able to share freely and openly is not something that is that easy. There's a very strong focus on legally protected species, which also means that a lot of research and money goes into making sure we know a lot about that. But the underlying phenomena, which range from stratification to sedimentation to phytoplankton, etc., is of course very fundamental to ecosystems, and that is not that well known, especially not on the scale of what we now want to do with our wind farms. And the science policy interface is also a challenge, which means that data may be available, but does it actually reach the spots in the decision-making chain where it needs to be interpreted? And at those spots, can the people who make the decisions interpret it? It is interesting to see how many people work on the science part and how many people work on the policy part, but the amount of people that actually work on the interface between them is very limited. It is often a little bit of an add-on to your normal job, but it's not something that has professionally been organized. Now, physical space, of course, is also a problem. We have done some studies in the past couple of years to try and figure out how big that problem may actually be. And when you face uncertain circumstances, one of the things you can do is work with scenarios, and that's what we've done, where we kind of figured out what could happen if we take different assumptions. Here we see a simple example. I won't go into too much details, that's not the focus for today, but just to get a couple of messages across. Here we focused on the idea, what if we fully focus on a sectoral approach, which means if you build a wind farm, it's a wind farm and nothing else? Or what if we would move into more integrated perspectives, where, for example, wind farms could be combined with types of fisheries, aquaculture, sometimes even with nature restoration or nature improvement? And what if we say energy is leading or energy is not leading? And then different scenarios pop up. And we did all kinds of analysis, GIS analysis, and I won't go into too much detail, but I want to point out two messages that you can really see here. The first is that if we look at the actual amount of gigawatts that are possibly generated offshore, then if we go for a very high density, which is about 6.5 megawatts per square kilometers, most scenarios simply do not reach 300 gigawatts. So that's already telling you something. The second thing is that if we would rely only on sectoral approaches, it becomes extra complicated to get to these high numbers of gigawatts. And where is the space available? Well, mostly, as you can see in all the maps, in the northern part of the North Sea. Now, what is the cheapest? It's actually in the south, because that's where it's shallow, that's where most demand is, and that's where you would rather want to develop them. And let's also agree on the fact that Norway may not be too keen on generating our electricity. So, without a consideration of other challenges, and without, for example, saying, okay, we're going to lose part of the fisheries, we'll have to do something to integrate it with nature, it's going to become very hard. This tells us not that it's not possible, this tells us that it's only possible if you do really good marine spatial planning. We also did that one step further. Here we did a study where we had a couple of studies that talked about what if we could go for an offshore integrated energy system, which would be, from a financial and technical perspective, by far the most attractive. That would basically mean you generate a couple of hubs in the North Sea, and around those hubs you generate, install wind turbines within an 80-kilometer radius. They will go to the hub, where you may do some storage, you may convert it into hydrogen, and from that hub you transport it to shore. Now, okay. And this is kind of the hubs that, from a technical economic perspective, would be the most attractive sites. This is what some of our colleagues at the Faculty of Natural Sciences did. And what we did is try and figure out, okay, is there actually space in those areas for offshore wind? And if you do that, we had a couple of scenarios, and just be aware of what we're saying here. Here we have scenarios where we propose that 50% of those wind farms would be open to also do fisheries, which at the moment is extremely ambitious. We would say 10% co-use in nature protection areas. Think about that. So we're talking about marine protected areas where we will do wind farms, which the British are actually doing to a degree, so it's not impossible, but it is something. Or we do both. And here we say we either replace 10% of the fisheries or replace 2% nature protection. So we're not about increasing nature protection, we're replacing some of them. These are the numbers. So 300 in those hubs may be feasible, but under these kind of conditions. Oh. And if we then look at the hubs, we saw something very interesting, depending on the most optimistic, where we combine everything with everything, or the most pessimistic, where we say it's either wind or nothing. Well, if we do that, those hubs that are especially in the Dutch and English waters, but also the Danish waters, they won't be hubs. There is simply not enough space to really have significant amounts of offshore wind. Oh, again, evidence that without serious choices and serious marine spatial planning, these 300 gigawatt ambitions may be a bit too optimistic. Now, to end up with a couple of, I would say, almost one-liners, but with a bit of backup that may give a bit of input for the session we'll have later, international MSP. So, first of all, what we kind of noticed is that international coordination may allow for a smarter use of space with potentially lower costs and ecological impacts. And I think the illustrations that I just gave give a lot of backing to the fact that it is probably very much necessary, especially for countries such as the Netherlands or Belgium. We need the others to help us reach our ambitions. But there are considerable differences between the national approaches. For marine spatial planning, the Brits don't even use a map. It's just already a very big difference. But also how they resolve conflicts. There's different legal and policy instruments used to resolve conflicts between different offshore users. And there's a very clear reluctance for more formalized international forms of MSP. The question is, of course, would you need a formalized international Greater North Sea Basin initiatives? Can we do it more informal? Which also from the Baltic experience shows us that there are potentials to also do it that way. But it is a message. And while we are working, and I think that's already very positive on trying to align things internationally, Norway literally cuts some of its energy links with Europe because they don't want to really be part of our energy system. It is going to cost them money. So how are we going to convince those people with their open areas to be part of this initiative? This is not an easy one. But also, we could open up quite a couple of gigawatts in the southern North Sea if we really go for more multi-use or for more combinations or dare to make choices, which may mean you cut out part of the fisheries, which take up a lot of space, but it means something for that sector. That's not an easy thing politically. So how are we going to do that? Well, planning processes are fairly fragmented. We may have marine spatial plans, but we also have all kinds of policy frameworks for shipping, for fisheries, for defense, which is basically not included in marine spatial planning. We just plan around it. But also, for example, for the fishery industry. There are quite some institutional ambiguities. If you want to create a hub with hydrogen electrolysis offshore, there's no idea which is actually the place where you have to go for a permit. And there's no clear legal framework that would stipulate how to get a permit. When those ambiguities are there, it is not easy for people to stick out their necks and take a risk. So you see a lot of inertia by people waiting and looking at each other. System integration is, of course, per definition cross-border. If you want to have an integrated grid which may be attractive, then you need to have cables between these countries, serious ones. You probably need to have hubs with areas that cross borders. And let's not forget that ecosystems don't care about borders either. So if you want to do something like that, international cooperation is almost per definition needed. Now, is that a cooperation where alignment in a more informal setting can already be enough? Does it demand more legal frameworks internationally? Does it demand a more formalized process of MSP? Those are questions, and we hope to get some reflection from you on those questions as well. But we do know that when we read about system integration, it's all technology and economics. There's not a lot of talk about marine spatial planning, international governance, the legal frameworks, which I think is very intriguing. When all these novel technologies are there, the type of examples that actually reach the agenda setting process are typically the ones that are embedded in the large companies. So if anybody has a very novel storage solution or a really nice nature-based solution option, that does not necessarily reach the political agenda because those are the actors that may not be able to get to the agenda. And regulatory space is really constrained because of this fragmentation I mentioned. Now, are we moving? Yes, we are moving. But while we're moving, we have to appreciate there is limited resources, time, staff, knowledge to do proper strategic planning. If we want to get to these ambitions in 2050, green, blue, and energy, we need strategic planning to really be built up. And the current reliance on sectoral policy frameworks really does constrain that. And that also means that the institutional space that is there to really progress towards strategic choice is limited, while the people who have to navigate, yes, there the word is again, to have to navigate that space, often do not have the time, the resources to really do that. Because people in ministries in most of these countries, they're extremely busy with trying to keep pace with the current pressures and the current agenda that is already there. Time to look forward towards 2050, poof, try and find that time. If we do,
Okay, thank you, Christian, for keeping time. Okay, now the second presentation by Jacek and Jul. Okay, come here. I have to say a few words about you, so you have to wait. I have it in my papers. So, Jacek Zaucha, who are you? From University of Gdańsk and the Institute of Oceanology of Polish Academy of Science, and I have to say a former employee of Maritime Institute also. Okay, so Jacek is the professor of economics and he laid foundations for maritime spatial economics in Poland and is the co-author of the first Polish Maritime Spatial Plan. And Jul, from University of Groningen, she is a postdoctoral researcher exploring maritime spatial planning, offshore energy transition and transboundary marine governance. Okay, so your time is now. And I wanted only to say, if you have questions, we will have a short session after this presentation, like 1 or 2 questions maximum, so be prepared. 12 minutes.
I will do my best to keep to the 12 minutes. Yes, this is working. So we are going to present to you today a little bit about the preliminary results we have from Work Package 2 in the NESB project. So some few words about what we're doing within the NESB project. We are working within Work Package 2 on ocean governance, where we're exploring transboundary marine governance on both the North Sea and the Baltic Sea, which is also why we're here together up here today. So these are some of our aims, and particularly this first one is what we're going to talk to you about. So a very brief overview of what we did. We finalized with a in-depth assessment of current bodies for transboundary marine governance on both the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. I will preface this by saying it's not going to be an exhaustive list, so we probably are missing organizations and collaborations on here, but these are the ones that fell within the scope of this study. So you see here a list of, let me count it, 9 organizations that we looked into. We conducted interviews with people active in these collaborations to better understand how it is that they're actually working, what are the barriers they're running into, what are the opportunities they see, the strengths they see of these collaborations, to get a picture of, okay, what's this network that's already existing? We kind of tried to divide them into, or make a bit of a categorization to see, okay, what do we have out there? So on the left, you see these organizations from the Baltic Sea region. On the right, those that we looked at in the North Sea. And quite clearly, we see there's a distinction between those bodies or those collaborations on a more formal level and those moving towards a more informal information sharing level. Formal here does not mean that these are bodies making decisions that they're imposing on national governments. No, but there is a dedicated set of resources, staff. There is at least some form, more formal body that is fostering the international collaboration. Whereas, for instance, for this Helcom VASP MSP working group, for the North Sea MSP collaboration group, the intention is more to share information, to share knowledge on a more informal level without dedicated implications. So that being said, I invite you to do the words about the organizations that we looked at in the Baltic Sea region.
Okay, so it was interesting, our first challenge, make sorting between formal and informal, and it was a kind of innovation. So here you can see the Baltic Sea region and, typical suspects. But I don't want to talk a lot about, those organizations because we know them, but rather about my surprises, because Jakub, he did all those interviews and then I interpreted them. And there were some funny things. Okay, but I will start from the beginning. So Baltic Sea region, very famous governance model. Why it's so important? Because you remember there are 3 types of MSP, which is information sharing MSP, strategic MSP, regulatory MSP. In this model, we have everything. This regulatory part, exchange of information, but also, setting important standards. So, for example, Jan told about those ecosystem-based, guidelines. So therefore, we are so proud of this model. And some surprises. because this model can fade, because we are working together for so many years. And when we made those interviews, for example, with these people from EU strategy, it was fascinating. They were full of energy. They were passionate. That was so interesting for me. Passionate still after so many years working. And one quote, "We have no money." That's great, because we can concentrate on the most important things, okay? Wow, wow. The second issue, it is, you know, kind of, I would say deficiency of this model, and I realized it only when I talked to BEF. You know what is BEF? It's a small organization. And I realized that they have their own niche. Because, you know, all those organizations, they have mandates, rules, roadmaps. And there is a need for somebody, if there is a problem, showing up and saying, okay, I will solve the problem immediately. If you need me, my expertise, I am ready. Please, approach me. And this is BEF. This is fascinating, because it means that there is a kind of a niche which can be filled in. And now, the third issue which I want to raise is that we were approached recently by organization telling, but you neglected us. We are part of the governance, and we listened to them and we said, yes, you are right. You are part of a new innovative governance. I'm talking about this Banos arenas, which, you know, are organized, which is informal, of course, exchange of information. But if we define this governance as this multiple layers, true. Because we were proud, okay, in Baltic Sea Region, from projects to decision-making and back to projects. That was a strong, but they are doing this. Okay, and the last one, I am finishing. Okay, and the last one is, probably it was Jan, but I don't remember, because it was anonymous. So people said something very interesting, that we have in Baltic Sea Region huge cooperation. We know each other, we cooperate, it's great, but in the North Sea, they don't have such a long-term experience, but they take more serious measures and investments. And this was also fascinating for me, because it means that this is, you know, kind of a feedback loop between those models. Okay, that's my sharing of my surprises.
And then we continue with a little bit of an overview on the North Sea region. As Jacek indeed mentioned, it's very much more based and embedded within these collaborations, within these more formalized organizations, rather than this project-based kind of experience that was built in the Baltic Sea region over the past years or decades. I won't go through the list here because I don't feel like that is the most interesting. Rather, we combined as well this North and Baltic Sea perspective in the following table, which I will shortly take you through, because as such, of course, it doesn't mean a lot to you. We identified some key opportunities and some key strengths and barriers for these organizations, as you can see on the top. And you can see that some things function both as as a strength of an organization and a barrier. Again, here I want to say, this doesn't mean that such an organization is not doing something that good. It's about the experiences of the people that we interviewed who are highlighting this is an issue that we need to work with, or that we need to work on, or this is something that we feel doing quite well. So of course resources, and I think this has been mentioned throughout the forum as well, we are dealing with limited time, money, staff to do these international collaborations, very often on top of the national files and priorities that you're working on. Which need to be taken into account. Why there's also green check mark for resources is that we recognize that many of these collaborative groups also produce a lot, right? They produce the EBA guidelines, for instance, that were talked about this morning. They produce or bring together data and information, and I think that's also a very valuable thing we must recognize, that it's not, of course, people and we're talking together in the same room, that there's more output on paper as well that can be used more broadly and can be shared more widely. A risk that was recognized also in some cases is the risk, okay, we're duplicating work. We're doing the same things. You know, there's a rich network of organizations, of collaborations, but we don't all want to be doing the same thing. So there's a need to talk to each other across all of these organizations. Political support was also mentioned by a lot of interviewees in the sense of, well, maybe we have kind of the political trends against us at this moment in time, where a lot of focus is on national priorities rather than intensifying international collaboration. Though it must be said that, for instance, as an example of the Greater North Sea Basin Initiative, is actually a very good example where this political support is central to the collaboration and actually led to this kind of an emergence and the foundation of a new collaboration. I think something that I'm also seeing here these 2 days is that there are very strong networks, and what you said, there's motivated people who are passionate about their work and which are the driving force behind all of these collaborations working together. In 2 cases, it was mentioned as, yes, we have a strong network, there is soft power through this network, but sometimes there's a lack of trust in working together. Also for this North Sea Energy Cooperation, which is of course very much focused on offshore wind energy in the North Sea, we have an issue with the non-EU countries and collaboration between EU countries and non-EU countries that must also be navigated and must be taken into account. I think a very important and a kind of central question to the research that we're doing is this kind of level of formality and accountability that's embedded within what we're currently doing. On the one hand, you could say, okay, we need more formalized collaboration if we want to go towards a more spatially efficient decision-making. But how do you keep countries accountable? How do you take away national sovereignty in decision-making? Well, it's not that simple. And a more informal way of working together also brings strength. We should not forget that. There is this soft network and a soft power that attracts those actually willing and motivated people, and that also keeps our collaboration outside of this political sphere of influence to a larger extent, and enables us to more freely share information. So in that sense, there is a case to be made for, there's a network of international collaboration that we need. There's not one authority, one organization that will solve all of our questions. And a very last and very obvious one is, of course, the influence of national processes. We are dealing with national planning cultures, with different MSP timelines that we must be aware of and complicate how we work together. And then I see you standing up, so I will leave the last few words.
1 minute more.
I will leave the last few words for you.
1 minute more. Okay, so this is fascinating. You know, young people, they can dig so much up out of this simple material. But okay, a few conclusions. So, yeah, networks are important, true. And of course, boundaries, they are a kind of a constraint, even if we want to overcome them. But I will tell you 2 of my own observation. One is here about flexibility, agility, because a lot of, they complain that we are not able to adjust to the new challenges, new situation. We are still committed to our past plans. It's very difficult for us, you know, to go to a new track. That was very interesting observation from many of these interviews, and I think it's true. And the second, which I want to share with you, is that we are mixing formal and informal. So if we have this informal, it's great, and we can accept that they work without money. But if we have formal, we should not do the same for them. So if we have, for example, Helcom Secretariat, we should not tell them now, okay, work without money, take projects. Makes no sense, and we are doing that. So we are spoiling somehow our beautiful system, but, you know, not having in mind what is really necessary, what is the real difference between this formal and informal. And this is something very important I want to share with you and stay in this group. Okay, thanks. Magda, so how much? 1 minute more, sorry for that.
We are, yeah. My role is to keep them. Yes. Okay, so now we are a little bit out of time, but if there are questions to the presentations. We can take one question to Christian and one to Jacek and Yul. Hello? Come on. I ask you to be active. One, okay, Jan.
It's still a bit of we're seeing kind of how and where it goes. I think it's not a distinct categorization. So it's we can't say that it is a lot of these organizations and collaborations have elements, more formal elements and more informal elements. So I don't think we should, in that sense, put a lot of value on where it is, but rather know and understand that there are these different functions that they have within the broader network. I think that's kind of what it meant to portray. That they're not all on the same level. They have different roles, responsibilities, more formal and legally based, and that more because they see a gap and they're responding to it. I don't know if that answers your question. Clarifies what it is.
An aggregated picture should still show the kind of general.
Yeah, but it's good to keep in the back of mind, and we'll keep discussing.
Okay, time out. Sorry. Okay, so now we have time for short reflections of practitioners. We have representative of two key stakeholders in the region. So I will ask them to have short statements. So first, please, Kai Trampler, Director of Spatial Planning at the Federal Maritime and Hydrographic Agency of Germany and the co-chair of the HELCOM WASAP MSP Working Group. Okay, please, the floor is yours. And the question is to you and then to you, Nick. The question is, what is your current urgency for collaboration within your respective initiative? And how are you addressing this urgency? And of course, if you have reflection on the presentation, it's also welcome. 5 minutes, it's yours.
And thank you for inviting me to the session and giving me the opportunity to offer my thoughts and reflections on this. I mean, I don't know if you caught the question, but it's actually quite technical. The question was like, what is the urgency for the respective collaboration? And as I said, as a lawyer, I could just limit myself to a very easy informal answer. I could just say, oh, this group was established with a formal mandate by HELCOM HOT and WASAP CSPD, it has terms of reference, a roadmap and a work plan, and we are meeting regularly to work on this work plan and, finish the tasks that have been given to us. And so here we are, yeah. So I realize though that this may fall a bit short of the answer that is expected. I have been a member of this group, I think, since 2011, and I also have to admit, like, I have a bit of an emotional attachment to it, not maybe quite as much as Jan, but really, like, before everything else, I think it always has been and remains a group that builds trust and lays the groundwork for transboundary cooperation, right? It's and with this trust, the group was able to develop guidance to help everyone, really, and among others, the EBA, and we're like now working on the reiteration of the EBA. And I think it's no wonder that the EBA guidelines always come up as an example because everybody's struggling with that, and in the North Sea as well. But also we have guidelines on transboundary consultation and the handling of data, so everything, everything from like top level to day-to-day work. And I think for the coming generations of plans, these international aspects that we need will only grow in importance. We have, while the informal context that you have identified, such as the North Sea Collaboration Group, for example, in the North Sea, or like even organizations as this forum where we meet on an informal basis, they are important. I don't think there's really, and here's the lawyer speaking, there's really no replacement for a regular formalized forum, you know, that has deep roots, secretarial support, and institutional support. And I think that is where Hakom Vasab comes in. And then on the content side, I would, again, highlight a couple of aspects and say we are in an era of climate change now. I mean, it's understandably, it is, given the security situation and, as I said, the war of aggression in Ukraine, it is a little bit of the back burner, and but it's still there. We have to deal with it. And we have, and again, the lawyer comes to from the ICJ and the International Court of Justice and from the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea. We have very strong, basically, you know, mandates to work on this, to fulfill this. And they say, like, no, every nation has to do its utmost to combat climate change. And like, I really think that maritime spatial planning will have to contribute to this. But how we do this, we have to, you know, we have to like think about together, you know. And the EBA is one of the tools that we use to do this. And connected with this is, of course, you know, you have highlighted this very well for the North Sea, is the question of cumulative impacts and how do we deal with this. And they are, by their nature, they're transboundary, so we have to have a forum to talk about them. So, you know, as you know, the group is currently working on an update on the EBA guidelines, and I'm sure we also will tackle cumulative impact assessments. And, you know, the results will not be perfect and answer all the questions. But we hope that they will contribute to the national processes and, you know, take us forward in the next generation of plans. So.
And thank you for sharing with us the internal fight between, you know, the emotions and the lawyer. So thank you very much for your insight. And now please welcome Nick Boxam from the Government of the Netherlands. And you are the steering group member of the Greater North Sea Basin Initiative. So also the question, same to you, what are the current urgency and how do you want to deal with them? 5 minutes or 4?
I'll keep it a bit shorter, thank you. My slide isn't up yet. Do I just push it or? Oh dear, okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm here from the Greater North Sea Basin Initiative, which is a bit of a different cap that I have because I'm also in the Northern European Sea Basins project, which is a collaboration with the Baltic countries, Baltic Sea countries. So I do feel a little bit more Baltic every day, but for today, I'm going to put on my North Sea hat again. I took some notes. So first, I would like to thank and express my gratitude and compliments to Christian and Yul. I was very impressed with your presentations because it shows in a systematic way what I feel every day. So this is very nice to have in the sense that you of course approach it from a scientific and a systematized angle. So the discussions that we have within the GNSBI, etc., every day, really, I really felt this. You put it really well to paper. It's really accurate. So thank you for that. Some insights on the specific question that the moderator asked. Something we see happening in our GNSBI initiative is this discussion that you also mentioned, but the flexibility between the formal and informal processes, and especially when it transitions from one to the other. For instance, we have an upcoming DG meeting. The DGs are the Directors General, who are like our highest up opdrachtgever in English. Let's just call them our bosses. You know, we are the steering group, but we also have bosses, so let's call the DGs our bosses. And then it still, even though they have political mandates, we have informal agreements, everybody's very nice to each other, we have trust, etc., etc., etc. It still feels like in those meetings it becomes more formal, and then it also becomes more precarious. Like, what can we decide? What have we already decided, and we have to keep to? I have to make very long statements for my Director General, what he can, what he can't say, something I don't ever have to do within our working groups with Jan, etc. So it's very different. It's still supposed to be informal, but it feels almost like a formal political UN meeting or whatever, or a European Union meeting. So that's a fascinating process psychologically and politically that happens. Something else in that angle is that we sometimes get a little stuck in talking too long about terms of reference, governance, etc., etc., etc. I'm, like I mentioned in the previous panel, leading the data sharing and knowledge sharing track. And we've been talking for months about an annex to our terms of reference about data standards. That's a waste of time for me personally. I want to talk about the actual topics like nature, fisheries, marine spatial planning, etc. So that's something that also happens in initiatives like this. And that's something you showed in your table with all the green and the red dots, something we run into as well. I wanted to add something specifically to what I've learned these past few days from the North Sea perspective that I've learned from the Baltics, and that's 4 stages. I'm going to mention 4 categories. I think we can just in general learn a lot of best practices already happening on the Baltic Sea in terms of marine spatial planning. A lot of people yesterday mentioned, a little bit jokingly, but I do think there's some truth to it, that the Baltic Sea is already perfectly planned. It might not be entirely perfect, but I do think you're further ahead than the North Sea already. So we can just learn in general from you. Then I want to specifically mention we are very impressed by the data and knowledge sharing systems that the individual Baltic Sea countries use. So for instance, we used Finland, Sweden, Poland, I think, Latvia, all as examples for the compendium that we've been building within the North Sea initiative. So even in technological data sharing developments, you are very far ahead and impressive. So we are following your footsteps as well for that. Something content-wise and thematically is the defense and security angle. I've also been to the meeting in Helsinki a couple of weeks ago. It was mentioned a lot as well, the defense and security, the safety of wind parks, deep sea cables, etc., etc. That's something that's much more salient on the Baltic Sea, but not so much yet on the North Sea, surprisingly. So that's something I will take home as well. And finally, you mentioned in your presentation the importance of being an agile organization, and for instance, being flexible enough to adapt with climate change developments, etc. That's also something the Greater North Sea Basin Initiative gets stuck in a little sometimes. We could be a bit more agile and flexible. So I'll take that home with me as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you for the reflections. Whoops, sorry. So, okay, because we started a little bit later, we are short in time, and we are now going to work. I mean, you are going to work. So you will be working on the tables where you are sitting. You have a moderator. Moderators, please raise your hands. Moderators of the tables? Oh, we don't have a moderator on that table. We don't have a moderator. Okay, you can mix, but every table needs to have a moderator. So please mix. Okay, do it fast. Okay, I would like to. Excuse me, Kuba, hold a second. Sorry. Okay, so the rules are, I will modify a little bit because we are out of time. You have first round like individual thinking, okay? Then we will skip the second round discussion with your neighbor. We know each other. So after individual thinking, you will go directly to the discussion at your table, okay? And we would like to end up with 1 or 2 summary sentences, which will be presented here. So please, moderator, choose one of the brave men and women to reflect. And you have 2 questions to discuss, excuse me. You have those questions also at the table. Why would you even need transboundary collaboration, and what does the ideal collaboration look like according to you? So please start working. I will keep on time. You have 1 minute for individual thinking and then 10 minutes for the discussion, and then we are wrapping up. And in the meantime, we can show the results of the first slide on a screen. 1 minute is very short, so it's finished. So you have to... Oh, okay, you can, I mean, you are the moderators at the tables. If I may ask you kindly to wrap up. Okay. Tick, 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 tack. This is the end of your discussions. I'm sorry. Can you launch this one? I'm sorry, but we have to finish. Hello? The time is cruel. We have to finish, and we have to leave the room in 4 minutes. Hello? We have to finish. Shh. Okay, so, dears, I would like you. The good thing is that we skipped the last Slido, so there will be no more Slido at the end. But here you have results of the first Slido. What to do or what not to do, or what to do if you want your cooperation to fail. So you can have a look at your responses. So don't do this, okay? Don't be egoistic too much. Don't elect Trump. There was one such. Don't be too fast. Don't ignore us, and so on. Okay, but we have 3 minutes to wrap up. So I will give a mic to each table. You have 30 seconds. Sorry. If you like, you can applaud. If you don't like, you can boo a little bit. 30 seconds for every. Okay, 45 seconds for each table.
Thank you very much. I'll keep it very brief, and I'll focus on that. No counting, please. I'll focus on what's the ideal collaboration look like, because I think we discussed here, would you want to go towards a joint marine spatial plan? Would you see the North Sea as without borders and then go do your spatial planning? We're not sure if it's realistic. Well, actually, we're sure it's not fully realistic. So there is a certain gray zone where you move from, no, we're doing our national plans and we're focusing on our national EEZs, and look at, okay, how do we get to that more cohesive, more coordination between the different countries, maybe exchange space, because we have these transboundary challenges. Nature doesn't just stop at the line that we drew on a map years ago, so we need more coordination. We need to keep talking to each other and keep exploring how to do this. And I think I'll leave it at that. And I hope this is within 45 seconds.
Yes, hello. So no what? No, only one option to applause. So we discussed a lot of things, but we had a lot of consensus also on one keyword, two words, but one keyword, no borders as an ecosystem. So we really should go beyond the borders, whatever we mean, physical or in mind. But also to do that, we definitely should have the big picture. So we need to have the vision and also to discuss that vision. And of course, we also talked about that would be supported by the sharing the knowledge at expert level, building the relationships, and also better communicate. And some very important notes also that somehow we shouldn't be also afraid of the formal cooperation. It should be mixed. Should be a nice mix of formal and informal, but we should maybe not be afraid of that and more look on what can we manage to achieve with that, what can we manage to decide.
50 seconds. Okay, good. Woo.
Okay, I'll try to beat this. Yes, we have all agree with what you have already said. With the why, transboundary, the issue requires it. We are need for that. Maybe I would like to add that what we discussed was trust. It's needed at all levels to create the solutions together. And I would add the problems as well, that we need to agree on the problems. And then our ideal, actually, GNSBI was rather high. And what we could see that in the Baltic, everything is in place. It just could function even a bit better. And in the North Sea, it's a bit wait and see. And that we need an alliance and cross-learning across these. And interfaces are important, trust is important, and resources and time. And yes, that political support, strong political will and a shared vision. And both informal and formal, that's what we agree on. And the diversity is a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Jesus, no. So we're against collaboration. No. So to say it like, to sum up, we have the same points as you have, but we also added one thing, which is what we really need is a transboundary collaboration. So the answer is, obviously we need. Of course we need it. That's a human nature, that we are, even though we are human beings, the most important is not that we have connection. That's the most important. Without that, we have no recollection where we are, what we do, and how we can evaluate ourselves. So that's the whole concept. It's the connection, it's the necessity. And the ideal part, I love that we pointed out that more inclusivity, joint policies. So after all, the more people is involved, the more sectors are involved, the better for us. So after all, like when the collaboration is ideal, when everyone is involved, then no one is excluded. Thank you.
Okay. So that was the last slide. Don't scan, it's not active. So I would like to thank all of you for your hard work. Sorry for the speed, but the time is the time. Thank you for the presenters. Thank you for your reflections. Thank you for your work. And so this is the question for you to keep in your mind when you come back. What will be your commitment after this session to make the transboundary cooperation work and improve? And remember that commitments are only valid when they are implemented. So think about your commitments and how you implement, and we will see on the next project meetings, and I will ask you about your commitments. So thank you very much for the session. Coffee break. And Margarita, please help me with the slide.